Hey, how's it going guys? Ancient Rune here, back with another Borderlands 3 video, and today I'll be going over how to practically get low level items for your builds without glitches. This means going through the story while skipping as much combat and XP gains as possible, as well as no side missions, no farming, and no collectibles. We also do not take into account that you could use the Terra event to farm even lower level items to have an anointment, which you are more than welcome to do, but it is so much extra farming and RNG and having to make multiple new characters. You are farming for the ideal item and a chance for there to be an anointment on it. Now with this video, it is assumed that you have played through the game enough to know how this story goes. I will mainly be going over what gear to use, what combat is forced, and what combat can be skipped. If I ever say continue as normal, it mainly is just traveling or NPCs talking. You of course would just be skipping any combat during then as well. We also use Guardian rank and a few outside items that will be mentioned as we go along. Now why is getting these low level items important? Low level items are used in multiple builds, but usually for more in-depth builds. Your average builds that a casual player will use won't worry about these problems. This stuff allows for us to use items for utility while opening up other options, such as Revolter and Brawler being low level means being broken easily. For a Revolter, this means opening up an anointment slot. While you have self-dot guns like the sellout, where you want low level, so when you hit yourself, you aren't going to go down right away from the splash damage or dot. Then you also have grenades like its piss and mesmer, which are nice at low level, so it's less likely to accidentally hurt you if you accidentally get hit with the splash of the grenade. And there are so many more items that you can get that I will go over during this video. Now, enemy spawns and XP can somewhat change depending on the playthrough, so you won't have the exact same levels as me, as I sometimes accidentally kill enemies I don't need to out of instinct, and I'm sure you will do the same. That's fine. You could also go more in depth with letting NPCs or environmental damage kill enemies so you don't gain XP, but that is so much more time that I'm sure most of you don't want to deal with. Also, depending on your luck on farms, you will have different levels on items, and depending on how many items you are looking for, you may want to do this multiple times. But for me doing this for the first time, I was able to get everything I wanted to in about 5 hours in game time. I also do use dialogue skip mod for my sanity, but this might mess with the game a bit on enemies you do and do not have to kill. Also, being able to use mods means you could also just use a save editor like I usually do, but I was curious on the practical level to save edit my items too. And I know some people like mods, but not save editor, so that's fine either way. Let people play how they want, right? Okay, enough rambling. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for more Borderlands content. I will have timestamps of different locations to make this easier. So I choose most because Iron Bear will be easy to set up for endgame. During the story, Iron Bear is just slower than using guns. This strat is not Mo's exclusive and you can choose whoever you want, but I thought Mo's would be easiest. An important part is to not go Iron Cub, as it will go after enemies you do not want to be killed and gain extra XP. Now with the skill tree, throughout the run I mess with different specs. The normal leveling suggestion is to go to Green Tree to get skills like Cloud of Lead, Redistribution, Scrappy, and Scorching RPMs. That is what I would suggest. Then you can either go Red or Blue Tree afterwards, depending on if you want to use more Iron Bear or not. When I use Iron Bear at endgame, I go a mix of Blue Tree and Green Tree to get Vanquisher pods and good Iron Bear damage boost. So first off, we have the starter area. We turn on our Guardian rank because this isn't a challenge run and it helps us get to the end faster. This does mean granting some experience stuff that I forgot to turn off that you can do, but at the end of the day, this is just going to help us a lot more than hurt and help our sanity. This first map is basically all forced mobbing. From the first room to killing Shiv to the enemies going after you and Lilith. So you just continue the playthrough as normal until you get to the objective to reach Vaughn. Getting to Vaughn, you basically just skip every enemy on the way. There is no need to kill them. Now of course, if you go down, you can kill one to get back up, or just take the death to save a little bit of XP. Then when you rescue Vaughn and head back to Lilith, you skip all the enemies again until you get to the skags and kill all of them until you hit the shock skag. Then continue as normal with going to Lilith. Next, you are at Ellie's garage to get the vehicle and to see some amazing jiggle physics at work. You are not killing any enemy and skipping all of them. When getting the car, I just got the one that's big chillin' and not one being driven because I don't know if it would give more experience. Then I just drive to the catch a ride. Now you go straight to Ascension Bluff and then the Holy Broadcast Center. Skip all content up until Mouthpiece, kill Mouthpiece, and continue the story as normal. Once you are at Tanis, everything here is forced mobbing, so just do all of that. Then you meet up with Ellie at the ship and get the car, collect biofuel, which does require killing enemies, then get the astronav chip, which you can skip all enemies there. Then go back to Ellie and continue as normal. Now Lilith is in trouble and you skip all combat while getting to her. When you are at Lilith, then you have some forced combat. Then revive Lilith and head to Sanctuary. Congrats, you should now be at Sanctuary around level 6, 7 levels below the level 13 skip to where you would be right here. If you're wondering why we don't just do the skip, this is exactly why. Now that we are here, you will continue as normal with your tasks. While doing your tasks, get any guns from your mail, lost loot, or stash to make a bunch of money to get SCUs, and keep some extra for good old Moxie. Once you get to Moxie, you will get yourself a crit and hail. This is how we are going to keep up our damage. Overpowered story weapons that give us no extra experience and no farming. Now because Borderlands 3 has decent legendary chop rates during story, you'll find some fun items and use those if you want, but these items are consistently there and powerful. Well, now we are on Promethea. When you are heading to Lorelei, you can skip all the enemies on the way. Then when you are following Lorelei, make sure to only kill the car that you need to for the echo log. When you are at the Atlas camp, you can skip all the enemies that spawn and head straight to Meridian Metroplex. You can also now skip all the enemies here and head right inside. The only enemies you will have to kill are the 2 fire heavies. When heading to Zero, you can skip all the enemies on the way. Now while you are securing the Malawan Weapons Depot, you will have to kill all the robots and Malawan troops to continue. None of this can be skipped. Now continue the story as normal. Head straight to Gigamind and kill him. Try and not kill any of the enemies around him. Then continue the story as normal to get to Athenas. Now for Athenas, it's pretty simple. Kill all enemies in your way until you leave Maya and go after Ava. While going to Ava, you will ignore all enemies. Once you're at the cemetery area, you will have all forced combat for the whole thing. Once Ava opens the door to Trant, you can skip all enemies until you reach the boss. Then kill Trant and head back to Sanctuary. Now back on Promethea, we meet Reese at Launchpad 7, skip all enemies on the way, get the Viper Drive and head to Skywell 27. Once in Skywell 27, skip all enemies until you get to the area with the objective and continue as normal. There is just a lot of forced combat here. Once you kill the enemies at the elevator, you will skip all enemies while going to the jet engine, turning it off, opening up the hole, and getting respawn activated. Once respawn opens the door, you will have forced combat until that is clear. Then you'll have more enemies to skip to blow up the server rooms. Then you continue through the story to reach the arena where everything is forced combat up to and including Katagawa Ball. Once you defeat the boss, go back to Sanctuary and continue the story. Then we go back to Meridian Metroplex and head to Atlas HQ and skip all the enemies and combat on the way. While in Atlas HQ, all the enemies are skippable until you reach the Hackhounds. After they are defeated, keep skipping combat until you reach the end where you have to fight enemies to open the doors. Then you will have forced combat to complete the story as normal, including defeating Katagawa Jr. Then head back to Sanctuary and tap Moxie for a new crit and hail to be more on level. Now back to the story, and on Promethea, we go to the objective with Zero, where there is forced combat to clear the way. We're now at the most fun thing ever, driving! You can avoid all combat until you get to the areas where you have to clear the way for Maya to blow up the doors. Once you reach the end of driving, there is forced mobbing section with COV before Maya can get rid of the barricade. Then all combat is skippable until you reach the end of the map to continue. Defeat the Rampager and continue the story as normal. As always, try not to kill any mobs during the boss fights. Then Maya goes on a vacation without us and leaves Ava for us to give to Auntie Lilith. Now we are at Eden 6, everyone's favorite planet. At this point, I am around level 15. We skip all combat until we are at Wainwright's place, where you have to kill enemies to get him to open the door. So then after that, it leads up to the anvil, skipping all enemies on our way. Now skip all enemies and press the button to meet Brick, then continue the story as normal with forced combat. Some stuff you could possibly skip, but Brick's AI is so funky and he just wants to go after everything. And with that bloodthirst, he leaves me hanging and I die. Then we meet Tina and have to get the toppings. You can skip all enemies for this besides the one who drops the ham. Return to Tina without killing all the newly spawned enemies. Now when heading to Mordecai, skip all combat. Once you get to him, you will have forced combat section right before Warden. Defeat Warden, save Hammerlock, and head back to Wainwright. Now on to Jacob's estate. You can skip every enemy until you reach the house and enter the cutscene with Troy. Even at the elevator, you just have to wait and avoid enemies attacking you. Then after the cutscene, you will have to kill a few enemies to open the door, and then continue forward and skip all enemies until you reach Billy the Anointed. After that, just continue the story as normal. Now we are with Clay. Everything in camp is forced combat, so just go as normal there. After that, we head to the lumberyard and skip all combat, then get to the log and head to Fort Sunshine. Once in Fort Sunshine, it's all forced combat, so just continue the story as normal. Now we are on to the next quest with Voracious Canopy. Skip all combat until you reach the T-Rex with Balex, which you have to kill. Then you enter the family jewel and skip all combat there as well, until you have to electrocute yourself to bring out old Robot Buddy, who leaves me out to die. Then once again we are skipping all combat, until we reach the surface spots, which we have to kill. Then we kill even more service spots, which then leads to some horny jabbers coming our way. Once the jabbers are defeated, we skip all combat until you reach the Ratches and the mech suit, where you will have to kill some of them. Then continue through the ship and skip all enemies. Once you reach Genevieve, you will beat her and head back to Sanctuary, where you have some not so friendly robots after you. The only ones that you have to kill are the ones at Sanctuary Bridge. Then go back to Eden 6 and continue the story to do the Rogue Site quest. We head straight to the Ambermire and skip all the combat along the way. Once in the Ambermire, we skip even more combat and get to the Rogue's base and get the loot tracker working. Once that's done, we can go forward to the map, which brings us to our first low-level item to get, the sellout. This is the only item where we go away from the story to get a low-level item. This item is so often used that you are absolutely going to want to get this, especially if you are an Amara player. This gun is commonly used to either apply a dot for elemental projector or break a shield. There are also a few other niche options, but you always want to have a low-level sellout to grab if needed. It's so good because it's got no charge speed, is flash for self-damage, multi-pellet, and has a high dot chance. So you will do the sellout quest and complete it. It will always drop at level 26 here because it's the lowest level the quest goes. Now go to Sanctuary and go to Earl's Vendor to get an anointed version. It will be at your level, which is going to be lower than level 26. For me, it was at level 21. The anointment does not matter, as you can just re-roll it later. You could also go for the ideal anointment and ideal parts of being as low damage as possible, but that's so much extra unneeded farming. While at Sanctuary, go ahead and get a new crit inhale as well. Now back to the Ambermire. Head to Agent D and skip all enemies along the way. Once you get to Agent D, there is a little bit of forced combat. Then you'll head to the dead drops and go to Agent Quietfoot, all while skipping any enemies that come along the way. Once Quietfoot gets 5 big booms, you'll have to kill all of the Mudneck clan. Then head to the docks and ignore all enemies along the way. Once you get to the docks, it's all forced combat. Activate the scanner and then kill the enemies that the ship spawns. Get Domino's ID and head back to the Rogue's base while skipping combat. Activate the loot tracker and continue the story as normal. You will probably have to kill some enemies along the way to get the loot tracker to continue, as it will go after enemies. Then you will kill Archimedes, then continue the story as normal. Once you meet up with Clay, you will head to the Black Barrel Cellar. You will skip all enemies until you get to the barrel room. Then you will have forced combat for the whole area until you get the Vault Key Fragment. After that, you will continue on and skip all the enemies until you reach Aurelia. With the Aurelia kill, I got super lucky and found a low level ×18 5 mag bang stick, which is amazing for stack bot farming. Ideally, you would farm for this at a much lower level in a vendor, but I did not do this for this playthrough. The higher level, the bang stick just means it's less likely you self-stack on yourself and instead stack on an enemy. Now continue on and complete the puzzles with the statues while skipping all of the enemies. Then you head into Graveward and do your normal stuff and kill him. Once you leave the vault and Athenas gets yoinked, continue the story as normal. Now back to Pandora. I'm around level 24 at this point. Once at Devil's Razor, ignore all the enemies while heading to Roland's Rest. Talk to Vaughn, and then head to the Splinterland. Give up your car to the machine, and then off to Big Donnie. Skip all enemies on the way. Once you get to the Golden Chariot, you will have to kill some enemies to make Big Donnie spawn. Once Big Donnie and Big D are defeated, grab the Golden Chariot and go back to the machine and enter Carnivora. While in Carnivora, you can skip every combat section. No one needs to be killed to continue. But while chasing Carnivora, there will be some enemy vehicles that you must kill to continue. Enter the guts of Carnivora and skip all combat right to the end. Kill Carnivora and continue this story. Once you go back to Roland's Rest, you will have some forced combat to defend the place. Then go after Troy and Tyrene in the cathedral until the turrets say nope and head back to Vaughn. Go to Conrad's Hold and you can skip all the enemies until you reach the minecart. There will be some Varkids you are forced to kill before entering Athenas' lab. You do not have to kill every Varkid, it will open up before them. Now we have our favorite section again, driving. Go through Sandblast Scar on either Vaughn's technical or your own vehicle. Going on a cyclone will be faster. You can respawn the technical at the end afterwards. Make sure to not kill any enemies and just drive straight through the chaos. Once you return Vaughn's technical, you can head back to Sanctuary. I got super lucky and found a low level Ruby's Wrath in the vendor at Marcus's. This is really nice for rocket jumping when you get it at a low level. While at Sanctuary, go to Earl's vendor and get a low level red suit with roid parts if you want to do specific melee Amara stuff. You would have just unlocked the drop from the past quest. Then go to Lilith to continue the story and head back to Vaughn. Go head back to the turrets and there will be some forced combat to clear up the COV. Wait for Athenas to turn the turrets back to your side, then head to the Cathedral of the Twin Gods. Drive past all the enemies in the little driving section. Once you reach the end, blow up the gate and you will have forced combat. Then when you open the door, you will have another forced combat section. Then after that door opens, you will just skip all the enemies while working on opening the next door. Once that is done, the only enemy in the next area you have to kill is Rachel the Anointed. Not even the 2 anointed that spawn afterwards. Just dodge all the enemy's attacks while turning the valves. Enter the Great Vault and defeat Troy. Then head to Sanctuary and get a new crit and hail. Then inspect the Radiant Slab and then go to Nekrotefayo. But before that, we get stuck by an NPC on the way. Yay, Nekrotefayo, extending the story even longer. I'm around level 27 at this point. Now, at Nekrotefayo, you're going to ignore the enemies in the first room you enter. Then, when you get to the camp, you will have forced combat to be able to continue. After you unlock the Catcher Ride, go straight to Typhon de Leon. Once you place all the vault keys, continue the story as normal and head to the vault. You can skip all the enemies until you get to the end where you have to kill all the enemies to clear the camp. Once the bridge is blown up, continue to the next objective, but skip all enemies along the way. Once you reach the next objective, you can skip the first room. Then you will have to fight enemies at the end of the second room until the door opens. Skip those enemies at the door and head straight to Tron. Beat General Tron and continue forward. Once you enter Tazadir Ruins, you will skip a lot of enemies. Once you enter the inside of the building, you will have forced combat. Activate the elevator and kill the enemies and Lieutenant Preston along the way. Once you go up the elevator, you can skip all content until you reach the end and have forced combat. Continue the story as normal and open the vault and get the Radiant Fabricator. Head back to Sanctuary and charge the vault key, and then head back to Typhon. Once you enter Pyre of Stars, you will want to skip as much combat as possible. Typhon will attack enemies, and I think my dialogue skip made it easier to skip enemies, so only kill enemies if Typhon is going after them. Otherwise, ignore them. This goes for the whole time during the loop of Pyre of Stars. Once you get back to Tannis and Ava, you will have forced combat from Tyrene sending enemies. Once Tyrene offs Daddy DeLeon, head straight to her fight. Defeat Tyrene and continue as normal and complete the story. Congrats, you beat the story at a very low level. At this point, I ended up at level 30. Tyrene was level 37, so I was at least 7 levels under. People have gone lower level than this, but that can be RNG, some specific skips, and a lot of other factors that are in there. First off, you want to turn on Mayhem to 11 and get an updated crit and hail. These will be your guns for the rest of the farming, unless you have Iron Bear, because that helps too. If you run out of money finding a good anointment, crit and hail, then you can sell the crits and hails you have gotten so far and make profit. It basically becomes infinite money. You can also go to Earl's vendor or a weapons vendor and find a gun with an ideal Iron Bear hardport anointment. Then turn your Mayhem level to 8 so you can still get guaranteed anointments, but less base damage on stuff like grenades. Do not change this unless told so. This also makes it a bit easier to kill things later on from having Mayhem 10 guns versus Mayhem 8 enemies. Okay, now to get into gear collection. First, we are going after stuff that can be gotten without gaining XP. The first items on the list are going to be from the Ava DLC, but we can bypass this with using diamond keys. If you do not have extra diamond keys, then I would leave this step for last, or do another character that goes through the DLC after you beat the story. We are going after a low-level Revolter and Mesmer. A low-level Revolter allows us to break it easier from either enemy damage or self-damage. Low-level Mesmer is going to be good for preventing you from downing yourself if you get hit with your own grenade. You can get as many as these as you would like, as it doesn't give XP. Of course, you aren't going to be farming a perfect parts Revolter and just want any non-projected part Revolter. Then Mesmer has fixed parts, so any Mesmer works. Getting multiple Mesmers is nice for different anointments, but it all depends on luck and how many diamond keys you have. Once you get those two, you can continue on or use more diamond keys for more low-level gear. I got lucky and found a longbow quasar. You want to make sure that you don't get the sticky part on this. This is good for ragdolling enemies so they don't shoot you. This is mainly for non-gun builds or auto-aiming builds, as trying to shoot a ragdoll enemy can suck. I also got a spring epicenter, which is nice for means of destruction uptime, which is a good option instead of the cloning magnetic tracker grenade. Stuff you can find and maybe use in the future is a stopgap, version 0.m, rerouter, revengeinator, Asclepius, cloning magnetic tracker, Roizen's Thorns, ×18 bang stick, Zephyrs eruption, Wester gun, Kibsorth with a blade, and going to re-mention longbow quasar and spring epicenter. Stopgap is for easy breaking for immunity. Version 0.m is for easy breaking for the damage ring. Rerouter is for funny bloodletter and health regen passes on class mod and artifacts tech. Revengeinator is for easy breaking for grenade effect. Asclepius is for easy while depleted effect uptime. It's very niche but a cool shield. Cloning magnetic tracker is for means of destruction uptime on Moes for stuff like launchers. Roizen's Thorns is for easy self-dot gun for fire element. ×18 bang stick is for stackbot stacking on yourself or enemies. Zephyrs eruption is for the debuff while also being less likely to down you if the projectiles make impact with you since they are splash. Wester gun is for a no charge self-dot gun. Kibsorth with a blade is good for a self-dot gun that does have a charge but also has a blade for melee builds while also being able to roll AC splash. Amazing for a weird melee build with elemental projector, while not having to swap away from weapons. This list is not complete, as there is still more you could find for utility. Next up, we are going to farm a burning summit grenade. This is good for breaking shields or proccing elemental projector for fire damage or any global bonus element we add on. You can also do fun stuff with this for blowing up clone. Doing this hidden objective grants no experience. You can either go in the trap and die 20 times or go in photo mode and press the button 20 times. This will give you 2 burn-in summits because it's weird. Now, I don't do it on this character, but you can vendor farm for a low-level cloning mining tracker. This grenade is pretty niche for most, but still sometimes useful. Getting an on-level hex is better 9 out of 10 times. Okay, now it's farming for stuff that gives XP. Now, depending on your luck will depend on the level of the item you get. Sometimes you'll get an item right away, and sometimes it will take many levels. That's just percent-based drops for you. So first off, we go and get in Its Piss. This is an amazing utility grenade for Zane and Amara to squeeze out some extra damage. Black MMOs can use it, but they usually do not. Its Piss is non-elemental, so if Zane gets hit by it, he shouldn't be damaged, but if there is a bonus element and a dot is applied, then it will not go well. There are no parts, so getting one will work, or getting multiple for different anointments. Remember, you can reroll anointments later if you need to. You also only need to kill Sloth as only he drops it and Thunk does not. Means less XP being gained. This also may be obvious, but when farming, try and only kill the boss and not the enemies around them. So that's all for the normal low-level items for your everyday build. But there still are more to go for, especially since you already have this character here. Next, you'll want to complete the Private Beans quest to unlock the Western Gun. Do this quest on Mayhem 0 for minimum XP gained. Then I realized I needed more damage before getting the Western Gun, so I farmed some Iridium and Vorash's Canopy to get an Iron Bear weapon anoint from Earl's vendor. At the time, I didn't think about farming a weapons vendor since I'm in Mayhem mode then, but whatever. I mentioned this earlier, but we can just do this at the beginning of entering Mayhem mode. Now go back to Mayhem Hate and get a Western Gun with radiation, cryo, and shock damage with an anoint. The anoint is technically optimal because, like the sellout, this is a self-dot gun. We're basically getting every element that isn't fire corrosive. Now we mainly take this for the no charge time, as it's extremely helpful in saving time from shooting to swapping back to your main gun. The main downside is it has much lower dot chance, so it's mainly good for Amara who has dot chance increases. Otherwise, I would go for the Insider, which is a completely different farm for going to the Guns, Love, and Tentacles DLC. Another optional farm is getting a quasar with a longbow part and no sticky part from Wicked Wardy. If you did not get one from the Diamond Loot Room, then I would do this. It's mainly an Amara tool, but can be used on other Vault Hunters. Then finally, I go farm Grave Ward for a 300% ward shield. This one can make you gain a lot of XP depending on your luck, so I leave this for last. Now after this, you can farm extra gear or make new characters to farm other gear at low levels. New characters I would do is farming a Zeps's Eruption on Mayhem in low level. This does require going through Slaughter Shaft, which gives a lot of XP. You also have Western Gun without an anoint, getting an Insider from Guns, Love, and Tentacles, a Revolter and Mesmer from Murder Mysteries DLC if you don't have any diamond keys at low level while being on Mayhem. You can also get a Plumage or Release Wrath non-anointed for rocket jumping. For those DLCs, you do the exact same thing and skip as much content as possible. Also, the Sellout, Western Gun, Insider, and Zeps's Eruption don't need anointments, but you can have some utility on there, or for Amara, have Terror Cryo on it to do some burn both ends tech. Having no anointment means lower level usually, which means less damage out on you. That is it for this video. If you would like to see videos like this for low level items and DLCs, then make sure to let me know. And feel free to ask any questions. Also make sure to like the video if you found this helpful and subscribe to the channel for more Borderlands 3 content. If you would like to see where builds would use low level items like this, then check out the Borderlands 3 documents, amarabuilds.com, and my build playlist, which will all be linked down below. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.